After weeks of flourishing ministry and growing wealth, Nathan received an unexpected visitor. It was Felicia. She came to his office with tears in her eyes, a deep sense of distress in her voice. "Nathan," she said, her voice trembling, "something is wrong. I haven't been able to stop menstruating since we, you know." Nathan was taken aback, the joy of his newfound success fading as he listened to her words. "What do you mean?" he asked, genuinely confused. "I don't know what's happening," she continued. "It's like my body is out of control. I feel different. But it's not just that. My health is deteriorating. I've seen doctors, but no one can explain it. I feel cursed." But before Nathan slept with Felicia, his life had been chaotic. Before now, one day, his mother spoke to him. "God has called you, my son, through the words of true prophets. He spoke to me and told me your purpose. It's not something you can avoid. You are chosen." Nathan recoiled, disbelief coursing through him. "What do you mean? Chosen for what? No, I don't." His mother interrupted, her eyes soft but filled with conviction. "From the time you were born, there were prophecies. Men and women of God told me you were destined to serve. You were meant to lead his people. It's not a curse, Nathan. It's a calling. And now the time has come for you to accept it." He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "This is absurd. I've worked my whole life for engineering career. For what? To give it all up and become a preacher? I don't believe in that. I don't want that life. Not after everything I've done. I will never in this life or the next be a priest. Being an engineer is enough for me. You have other sons," he told his mother. The next morning, Nathan stared blankly at his phone screen, disbelief coursing through his veins. The voice on the other end had just delivered the blow. "Your position has been terminated effective immediately." For a moment, the words didn't register. Nathan chuckled dryly. "Certain this was a mistake. You mean John, right? Or Mark?" "Can't be me," he replied confidently, his voice brimming with assurance. But the silence that followed crushed his confidence. "Mr. Nathan, I'm sorry. Your layoff is final. HR will be in touch regarding severance." The voice repeated, colder this time before the line went dead. Nathan's hand trembled as he lowered the phone. How could this be happening? He was their best engineer, a star in the field, the one who trained others. He was the untouchable asset in a volatile industry, or so he thought. He slumped onto the couch, the walls of his luxurious apartment suddenly closing in. The eyes started to the framed certificates on the wall and the glimmering trophies from corporate competitions. They all seemed to mock him now. What kind of joke is this? He muttered to himself. His chest tightened as a flood of thoughts crashed over him. This wasn't just a job. It was his identity. It was proof that he had escaped the shadow of his mother's relentless prophecy. "You are destined to be a priest, my son. The Lord has chosen you." Her words echoed in his head, sharp and haunting. Nathan shook his head violently, rejecting the thoughts. No, he whispered. "This has nothing to do with that nonsense." But deep down, an unease began to brew. Something wasn't right. His career had been flawless, his path certain. Why would this happen now? Just as he had started to feel invincible, Nathan's thoughts were interrupted by the sudden shrill ring of his phone. It was his mother, of course. It had to be her. Almost instinctively, he rejected the call. He didn't need her to say anything about God's plan or divine intervention. But when the phone buzzed again and again, he finally answered, his voice sharp and defensive. "What?" There was a pause on the other end, and then her soft voice came through. "Nathan, are you okay?" Nathan closed his eyes, his jaw tightening. "Mom, I don't have time for this. I just lost my job, all right? So unless you have got something useful to say, spare me the sermon. Another pause. Then calmly she replied, Nathan, this is not the end. It's only the beginning of what God has called you to do. Her words hit him like a sledgehammer. His chest heaved with anger and confusion as he backed back. Mom, stop it. I'm not a pastor, and I never will be. But even as he yelled, he couldn't shake the strange feeling creeping up his spine. A feeling that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just a coincidence. Nathan's life has been a tug of war between his dreams and his mother's prophecy. From the time he was a little boy, strangers in his church would approach his mother with knowing smiles and proclamation. This child is chosen. He would lead nations in God's name. Nathan had hated every word of it. He didn't want to be a pastor. He wanted a life of science, wealth, and luxury, far away from the pulpit. And for a time, he had achieved it until now. Back in his present, Nathan threw his phone across the room in frustration. He wasn't going to let some prophecy dictate his life. But as the days passed, his confidence crumbled. Job application went unanswered. Bills began piling up, and the once vibrant Nathan found himself sinking into despair. Then one night, something strange happened. As he lay in bed, unable to sleep, a voice, not his own, whispered in the stillness, "It's time." Nathan bolted upright, his heart pounding. Was he losing his mind? Or was this something greater? At night, he would sit by the window of his apartment, staring out at the city lights, wondering if it was too late to turn back. His mind would race with doubts. Was he really chosen? Was he truly meant to lead people? Was he truly meant to leave behind everything he had worked for? What would people say? What would his friends think? And then, in the midst of his thoughts, a memory would resurface, a memory from his childhood, one that he had long buried. He remembered how, no matter which church his mother took him to, the same prophecy would be spoken over him. You will be a man of God, a servant to the nations. You will preach his words, and his people will listen to you. Every time, he would feel a knot tightened in his stomach, anger rising in his chest. No, he had always thought, this isn't for me. I won't be like them. But now, years later, after all the success, after all the pride and the defiance, the words came rushing back, uninvited. They echoed through his mind like a drum beat, persistent, relentlessly. The question nagged at him. What if this is why everything is falling apart? What if the job loss wasn't a setback but the first step towards something greater? He finally decided to visit the church where it all started. The old building stood quietly at the edge of the city, a place where his mother had once prayed for him and the prophet had spoken over his life. The familiar scent of incense mixed with the scent of wood and candle wax filled his nostrils as he stepped inside the church. It was empty except for the old pastor, who was quietly praying at the altar. Nathan hesitated at the door, but something tugged at his heart, urging him forward. The pastor turned slowly as Nathan approached, his wise eyes gleaming with recognition. "Nathan, my son, I knew you would come." Nathan swallowed hard, his throat tight. He had never truly believed in the prophecies until now. "I don't know what to do. I've been running from this my whole life." The pastor smiled softly, motioning for Nathan to sit beside him. Running is natural. We all fear what we don't understand. But sometimes, God's calling isn't something we can ignore. It finds us, even when we are not thinking. "I don't want to leave everything behind. I've worked so hard for what I have." The pastor nodded, his gaze compassionate. God doesn't ask us to give up our passion, Nathan. He asks us to trust Him with it, to use the talent He gave us for His purpose. You don't have to give up your career, your gift, your ambitions. He wants to work with you, not against you. But you must first surrender your will to his. Nathan's chest tightened. He didn't want to surrender. He didn't want to face a life that had been mapped out for him long ago. But as he sat there, in that sacred space, he felt an undeniable pull. It wasn't a choice anymore, it was a call. "I am scared," he whispered, his voice breaking. The pastor placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's the first step, my son. Fear means you are at the threshold of something bigger than yourself. But trust me, you are not alone in this. God has always been with you. Even in your darkest moment, He's never left you." Nathan sat in silence for a long time, the weight of it all settling on his shoulders. The fear, the confusion, the anger, it all mixed together. But amidst it all, a new clarity began to emerge. Maybe the pastor path ahead wouldn't be easy. Maybe he would face ridicule, doubt, and even more loss. But this was his purpose, and it was time to step into it. Nathan had always prided himself on his independence, his ability to take care of himself, to stand tall and chase after his dreams. But as he made the decision to finally follow the call he had long ignored, he quickly learned that obedience to God wasn't a path paved with comfort or immediate reward. The first few months were difficult. He sold his car to pay for a small apartment near a modest church, the same place where he had once laughed at the idea of becoming a pastor. He tried to start a small business with his savings, hoping it would help him make ends meet. But no matter what he did, nothing seemed to yield any success. Every investment he made seemed to falter. Every door that was him open was slammed shut in his face. Bills piled up. The business folded. Opportunities vanished as quickly as they appeared. The dream job he had once clung to now seemed like a distant memory. And with each passing day, Nathan could feel himself sinking deeper into a well of despair. His once confident demeanor began to crack. He couldn't understand why this was happening to him. Hadn't he obeyed the call? Wasn't this the path he was supposed to be on? He had nothing left to give, nothing left to hold on to. As the money ran out, Nathan found himself turning to his siblings. He had never asked them for help before, not even when things were difficult, but now his pride could no longer shield him from the harsh reality. "Folklore, please," he said one evening, his voice raw with desperation. "I've lost everything. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. Can you help me?" Folklore, his older sister, had always been the successful one. She had a thriving business and a comfortable home. She had everything Nathan had once dreamed of. But as he looked at her, hoping for a lifeline, he saw only a look of hesitation in her eyes. "If you had thought about this, Nathan," she said, her voice laced with frustration, "you could have stayed in your job, made something of yourself. Now look at you, asking me to support your choices. You shouldn't have listened to your mother. This isn't what I signed up for." Nathan stood there in stunned silence, feeling the sting of her words cut deep. The rejection from his own flesh and blood felt like it blew to the very core of his being. He turned to his older siblings, each of them offering excuses or judgments, unwilling to offer the help he so desperately needed. The pride he had once clung to so fiercely had now left him exposed, alone, and desperate. He found himself begging for scraps of help, for a loan to get by, for someone to believe in him. As the weeks turned into months, Nathan, once striving confidence, gave way to guilt and shame. He could no longer walk around with his head held high. He couldn't hold his own in conversations about success or ambition. His peers, once his equals, now seemed so far out of reach. He had lost everything, not just financially, but spiritually, emotionally, and relationally. His pride had cost him dearly. One night, alone in his small, dimly lit apartment, he sank to his knees. The weight of everything he had given up pressed down on him like a suffocating burden. He had nothing left but his faith, and even that felt like it was slipping away. "God, why?" he whispered, the words a bitter cry. "I give up everything for you. Why is this happening? Why am I being punished like this for what felt like an eternity?" There was no answer. Nathan had hit rock bottom, and in his desperation, he sought advice from anyone he thought might be able to help him. It was in this state of vulnerability that he met Pastor Peter, an influential man in the ministry, a man who seemed to have all the answers and an undeniable success that Nathan could only dream of. Peter's church was thriving, his finances were abundant, and people respected him. But Nathan soon discovered that not everything was as it seemed. From their first meeting, Nathan noticed something unsettling about Peter. There was a certain coldness in his eyes, a calculated charisma in his words, and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. But when Peter spoke of his journey, his hardship, and the immense power he had in ministry, Nathan was drawn in by the stories of success. "You know, Nathan, I see great potential in you," Pastor Peter said one evening as they sat in his expensive office. "There's something about you, something rare. You have the gift, the anointing. But to truly thrive in ministry, to see the kind of result you desire, you must first understand that the spiritual realm is a battlefield. The devil is at work, and if you're not prepared, you'll be crushed under the weight of it all." Desperate to see the ministry flourish, Nathan nodded eagerly, hungry for any insight that could help him escape his misery. Peter's words seemed to make sense, and Nathan, desperate to see the ministry flourish, listened intently as Peter spoke of secret paths to power. "I can help you, Nathan, but the path is not easy," Peter continued, his voice slow and persuasive. "You must be willing to trust me. You must be willing to make sacrifices for greater good, for your calling." Nathan didn't quite understand what Peter meant, but he felt a strange sense of reassurance in his presence. Perhaps this was the answer he had been searching for. "I'll do anything," Nathan said, its words filled with the bitterness of his troubles. "I'll do anything to see my ministry grow, to be successful. What do I need to do?" Peter smiled, a smile that was both charming and chilling. "You must align yourself with the occult, Nathan. This is the hidden knowledge that so many of the world's most successful men and women tap into. Whether they admit it or not, it's power beyond what you can imagine. But you must be careful. It is not just about following rituals. It's about dedication, sacrifice, and love." Nathan didn't fully understand, but he was willing to take the risk. Anything as long as it meant success. Peter explained that in order to truly activate the power, Nathan had to fall in love with a virgin, someone pure. Then, within 40 days, he had to have sex intercourse with her. It sounded absurd to Nathan, but the allure of immediate prosperity clouded his judgment. Peter promised him that this would unlock the blessings he had long been praying for, and the result would be undeniable. Though Nathan felt uneasy, he decided to trust Peter. He couldn't see any other way. Peter introduced him to Felicia, a quiet, beautiful young woman who seemed perfect for the task. Nathan was struck by her innocence and purity, and despite his initial reservations, he soon found himself drawn to her. The chemistry between them grew quickly, and as promised, within the 40 days, they slept together. The moment after their union, something shifted within Nathan. A strange sensation filled him, as though he had tapped into something for more power than he could comprehend. His ministry began to prosper in ways he had never imagined. People flocked to his church, Donations flooded in, and doors that had been previously closed to him swung open with ease. His influence grew, and his name became known far and wide. Yet, despite the success, a strange emptiness lingered inside him. But then one day, after weeks of flourishing ministry and growing wealth, Nathan received an unexpected visitor. It was Felicia. She came to his office with tears in her eyes, a deep sense of distress in her voice. "Nathan," she said, her voice trembling, "something is wrong. I haven't been able to stop menstruating since we, you know." Nathan was taken aback, the joy of his newfound success fading as he listened to her words. "What do you mean?" he asked, genuinely confused. "I don't know what's happening," she continued. "It's like my body is out of control. I feel different. But it's not just that. My health is deteriorating. I've seen doctors, but no one can explain it. I feel cursed." Nathan was stunned, his mind raced, trying to piece together the events that had unfolded. He never imagined that this would be the outcome. He hadn't expected any consequences for his actions, and now, with Felicia's health spiraling out of control, he began to fear the consequences of his own action. He rushed to Pastor Peter, desperate for answers. "What have I done?" Nathan demanded, his voice filled with panic. "She's suffering. I don't understand what's happening." Peter listened silently, desperation unreadable. When Nathan had finished speaking, Peter finally spoke. "You have unlocked a power beyond what you understand, Nathan. And with that power comes great responsibility. The occultic world is not something to be meddled with lightly. The price for the success you've gained is more than you could have imagined." Nathan's heart sank at the weight of his action and began to settle in. His ministry, his success, his wealth, they were built on something far darker than he had ever expected, and now the consequences of his decisions were coming back to haunt him. Felicia's suffering was just the beginning. Nathan's blood ran cold as Peter's words echoed in his ears. The very idea was unthinkable, yet Peter spoke with such calm and certainty, as if he were discussing a mere inconveniences. "You must end her life, Nathan," Peter said, his voice dark and composed. "If you don't, your entire ministry, everything you have worked for, will crumble. The power you have gained is tied to her. You have no choice. She knows too much now." Nathan recoiled, his mind whirling in confusion and horror. "What are you saying? You want me to kill her after everything we've been through? She trusted me." Peter's expression didn't change. "It's not about trust, Nathan. It's about control. The forces you have entered into have no mercy. She's a liability. If she leaves, she'll destroy everything you have built. You can't afford to let her go free." Nathan took a step back, struggling to process what Peter had just suggested. The words felt foreign, wrong, yet something inside him, something he hadn't been aware of before, whispered that Peter might be right. The weight of his ministry success, his newfound wealth, the growing congregation that now viewed him as a spiritual leader, all of it would vanish in an instant. The reality of the occult world he had stepped into was dark and unforgiving. "Won't you help her? I don't want to be a part of this anymore," Nathan pleaded, his voice shaking. He had never imagined it would come to this. He had only wanted to survive, to escape the poverty and failure he had lived with for so long. Now, it seemed he was trapped in a nightmare he couldn't escape. Peter's eyes darkened. Once you have made a pact with forces like these, there is no turning back. "Nathan, don't be foolish. If you refuse, she will not be the only one to suffer. You will lose everything you have gained. And worse, the curse of failure will fall on you and your ministry. Forces will know you are unworthy, and they will reclaim what's theirs." Nathan's hands trembled, his heart pounding in his chest. This was too much to bear. His mind raced, grappling with the reality of the situation. He thought of Felicia, her innocent smile, the trust she had shown him, the love they had shared. How could he betray her like this? But then, he thought of the promise Peter had made, the success, the wealth, the growing ministry that had seemed to arrive from nowhere. He had never imagined that his life would change so quickly, and as he stood there in Peter's office, he could feel it slipping away already. Think about it, Nathan, Peter continued, his voice almost soothing now. You are a man of God. You know how it goes. The greater the blessings, the higher the cost. This is your test. This is how you prove yourself worthy. Nathan's thoughts were in chaos. He was stuck between the man he thought he had been and the man he was becoming. Could he really go through with it? Would he destroy an innocent life to keep his own intact? No, Nathan whispered to himself, shaking his head. I can't, I won't. But deep down, a part of him feared that if he defied Peter, if he refused, he would be lost forever in the abyss of his failure. Every failure from his past, every missed opportunity, every hardship had been leading him to this crossroad. Would he make the right choice, or would he let the darkness consume him? Peter's smile never wavered, as if he had anticipated this resistance. You see, when you lose everything and the demons come for you, remember my words. You had a chance to choose, and now it's too late. As Nathan left Peter's office that night, he felt as though a weight had been placed on his shoulders, a weight that threatened to crush him. He didn't know if he could live with the decision that was being forced upon him, but he was increasingly aware that he might have no other choice. The fear of losing everything, the ministry, the success, the wealth, gnawed at him. But the fear of losing his own humanity, of becoming a monster, was even worse. Could Nathan resist the darkness, or would he give in and sacrifice Felicia to secure his place at the top? The battle within him raged, and time was running out.